Joining us today is Joel Rubin, a former State Department appointee for the Obama administration, former Bernie 2020 Jewish Outreach Director, and the founding political director of J Street, a liberal pro-Israel lobbying group. Thanks for joining us today, Joel. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Cindy, for having me.
Well, Joel, a few days ago, J Street asked members of Congress to back a resolution condemning the Hamas attack on Israel and supporting the Jewish state's full-throated defense of its interests, which the Biden administration does support. Did you sign the letter? And if not, could you explain why?
Well, there was a letter that was condemning that approach by J Street. The resolution I support. I completely believe that the Congress is in the right at expressing support for the state of Israel and its right to defend itself, especially in the face of what was the single greatest mass murder of Jews since the Holocaust, nearly 5,000 casualties of innocent civilians, including 1,400 dead. Now, J Street, former staff and alumni sent a letter that is to J Street, asking them to not pressure members to sign on to that resolution. I think that's a mistake. I think that right now members should be free to choose what they want to do, and there should not be pressure in either direction. And the members are in the right for expressing support for the state of Israel in this moment.
What makes you think, Joel, that Israel needs to be on the ground in Gaza after this latest attack?
You know, Cindy, this was such a horrible attack, and the history of this conflict between Hamas, which governs Gaza, and Israel is incredibly violent, and it's been over multiple decades. But what's happened right now is that Israel's southern border was penetrated through a direct military assault planned over a year's worth of time, where the Hamas invaders, essentially the military invaders, went into civilian areas, went into kibbutzim, collective farms, went to a rave where young people were dancing in the night, and either murdered them or kidnapped them and brought them back into Gaza. So for Israel, it needs to provide defense in its southern border for its communities. It cannot allow a terrorist organization to sit there without any resistance. And so that's why they're planning to do this invasion. It's going to be a very difficult one. It's painful to watch the loss of civilian life. That is not what should occur. That said, Hamas has asked for Israel to invade it by launching this diabolical attack. Hamas did not send leaflets into Israel asking for peace and a diplomatic discussion. Hamas doesn't even have a unity government with the Palestinian Authority leadership in the West Bank. It kicked them out in 2007 from Gaza, slitting their throats along the way. Hamas is not an organization to engage with diplomatically. And unfortunately, right now, it appears that Israel is left with no choice but to defend its southern border and hopefully do it, and they should do it in accordance with international law. They say they will. We have to watch that. But this is about defending their population.
Yeah, the images that we've seen have captivated the entire world, and obviously heartbreaking to see so many innocent lives being lost. And so, Joel, what does the attack have to do with Hamas' 2017 charter?
Well, the charter of Hamas, when it was started, was the goal was the elimination of Jews from all of the state of Israel, to murder Jews and to eliminate Israel, period. Now, that is a violent terrorist charter. That is a charter not for peace and reconciliation, not for two states, for two peoples, where I've been a part of the American Jewish pro-peace movement for well over a decade and a half of my career. People like me have been advocating for a two-state solution that at the end of the day, the way to end the violence is for justice for the Palestinians and the Israelis in countries that they can have to call their own. That's not Hamas's vision. Historically, if one looks back at it a few decades ago, when there was a robust peace process between Israel and the Palestinians in the 1990s, known as the Oslo process, and there was an Israeli Prime Minister, Shimon Peres, who had just won the Nobel Peace Prize, when there was engagement there, Hamas came in and put in suicide bombers in Tel Aviv and killed scores of Israelis, undermining that. That's what they do. They're a terrorist organization. They're opposed to peace. They want to kill Jews. That's what they showed us last week. And that's why we're in the conundrum that we're in still to this day of not having a full peace agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Absolutely, Joel. And I appreciate you making the distinction between Hamas and the Palestinians instead of lumping, a terrorist organization with another group of innocent folks. And so, of course, nobody wants to see war, but it does appear inevitable right now. Once the violence starts, what do you see as the end game to this horrible conflict?
Yeah, and I want to reinforce what you just said. This is not, should not, and should never be a conflict between Israelis and Palestinians as people. This is a conflict that has persisted for so long where we do not have peace and where extremist groups have been driving this into violent endgames. And where does this go now? What is the endgame now? My goodness, I hope and I pray that it will be a short military operation, that the Hamas leadership will be decapitated. Make no mistake about it. This leadership has to go. They are harming the Palestinian people. They are killing innocent Israelis. And that there will be a next day, that there will be a carrot, not just a stick. That we saw even some whispers of this yesterday. The Palestinian president, Abbas, said he condemned this terrorist attack. We have Secretary of State Blinken and President Biden saying there needs to be a two-state solution. We've had Israelis in the street for the past year protesting in favor of their democracy. There should be, and there must be political will to get to peace. And so that has to be the end state. There has to be a carrot at the end of this stick. Otherwise, we're just going to continue to see violence and despair and more pain.
Absolutely. And Joel, I appreciate you also using this platform to speak on these issues that really matter so much. But I also saw that you're running for Congress next year in Maryland's 6th District. If you were in office today, what steps would you take in response to this month's terror attack?
Yeah, Cindy, thank you for mentioning that. And yes, I'm running for an open seat in Maryland's 6th Congressional District. It's currently a +2 or 3 Democratic seat. It's the most competitive seat in Maryland. Our primary is May 14th. So I can be found at rubinformaryland.com. If I were in Congress today, without a doubt, I would be calling for every effort to be made to protect civilian life in Gaza, to provide a horizon of peace, and to ensure that the American diplomacy, and I served at the State Department, so I have a bit of a feel for how the agency works in these issues. I really give them the power they need to muscularly engage in diplomacy. And I would also call for support for Israel, a call for their right to self-defense, and also push for money for humanitarian assistance to the Palestinians. And then the last thing, because I am a diplomacy nerd at heart, I would be calling on countries like Egypt, who has a border with Gaza, to facilitate quickly humanitarian assistance and support for Americans, especially American Palestinians in Gaza, to come through. That's still, for some reason, not happening. And then we have other allies in the region like Qatar, who can help us to figure out how to get the hostages out. There are nearly 200 in Gaza being used as human shields. So all of that together, a holistic package about defense and peacemaking. And that's what I'd be calling for.
Well, Joel, I want you, especially as a candidate, it's really important for, the community to be able to contact you. What's that website one more time? And where can our viewers find you on social media? Any handles that you want to share?
You got it. Thanks again, Cindy. So it's rubinformaryland.com. That's RUBINFOR Maryland.com. That's my website. And on Twitter, I'm at Joel Martin Rubin. And from there, you can find me as well on Instagram at Joel M. Rubin, and Facebook as well, Rubin for Maryland. And it's all there on my website. So definitely check us out. It's an exciting, competitive primary. A lot of candidates. As Democrats, we love to pile in open seats, and that's what this one is. As the current sitting member, the incumbent member, is running for the Senate to try to replace Senator Ben Cardin as well. So it's an exciting time in Maryland politics.
I'm sure exciting and very tiring, Joel. So good luck on the campaign trail. And thank you for joining us today on Occupy Democrats podcast.